My husband set the divorce papers down with a grin and said, "Accept my lover, or we are done." I signed those papers without pausing. My husband's face went white. "No, hold on, you got it wrong. For 15 years I thought I had the perfect life, the perfect husband. But one Tuesday, he handed me an envelope and told me I had a choice. Accept his mistress, a woman half my age, or lose everything." What he didn't know was that I'd already found a cheap, pink feather earring, and that tiny piece of trash was about to unravel his entire, miserable life. Ever wonder what it feels like to be completely underestimated? My name is Linda, and if you'd asked me just a few weeks ago to describe my life, I would have said stable, comfortable, maybe even a little predictable. I'm 48. I live in a beautiful colonial house in the suburbs of Chicago, with a wraparound porch I repainted myself, summer after summer. I have 2 amazing sons, a pantry so organized it could be featured in a magazine, and I had a husband, Mark, for 15 years. It was a Tuesday evening. Tuesdays used to be our taco night, a tradition we started when Jason was just a toddler. But lately, Tuesdays were just nights Mark worked late. Or at least that's what he said. I was standing at the kitchen island, scrubbing a stubborn coffee ring off the granite. The house was quiet. The boys were upstairs, Jason tackling homework, Tyler lost in a video game. The only sounds were the hum of the fridge and the rhythmic swish of my sponge. Then the front door opened. Usually, Mark would walk in, shoulders slumped, tie loosened, complaining about I-90 traffic, asking if dinner was ready. But this time, the energy was different. He practically strutted in, a bounce in his step. He was wearing his navy pinstripe suit, the one he saved for board meetings, and he smelled like an expensive distillery mixed with a cloying, floral perfume. "Definitely not mine. Linda," he said. "Not honey, not babe, just Linda." He didn't come to kiss me. He walked straight to the kitchen table, pulled out a chair and sat down. Then he placed a thick manila envelope on the table. It landed with a heavy, deliberate thud. It sounded like a judge's gavel. "Sit down," he commanded. It wasn't a request. My heart started a slow, heavy thumping in my chest. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, my eyes still on that ominous envelope. "Dinner's in the oven, Mark. Pot roast, your favorite." "Forget the pot roast." He waved a dismissive hand. "We need to discuss the future." I sat opposite him. That envelope lay between us like a loaded weapon. Mark leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head, a smug smile playing on his lips. He looked like a cat that had not only eaten the canary, but had also negotiated a book deal about it. "Here's the situation," he began, his voice smooth and practiced, as if he were pitching a client. "I've met someone. Her name is Tiffany. She's 28. She works in marketing, and she makes me feel things I haven't felt in a decade. Passion, excitement, vitality." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands went cold and numb. I just stared, waiting for the punchline, for him to say he was joking. But his eyes were dead serious. "I know what you're thinking," he continued, not letting me speak. "You're thinking this is the end. But it doesn't have to be. I'm a pragmatic man, Linda. I know you rely on me. You haven't worked in 15 years. You like this house. You like your garden. You like the fact that the boys go to private school." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, invading my space. "So I've drawn up a proposal, an ultimatum if you will. Inside that envelope are divorce papers, but they're just a formality, a threat to show you I'm serious. Here's the deal. I'm going to be with Tiffany. I'll spend my weekends at her apartment. I'll be here during the week for the boys. We stay married legally. You keep the house, the credit cards, the status of being Mrs. Mark Reynolds. In exchange, you look the other way. You accept that I have a life outside of this domestic boredom." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Accept my mistress, Linda, or we break up right now. And if we break up, you know you can't survive out there alone. You're nearly 50. The job market isn't exactly begging for former accountants who haven't touched a spreadsheet since the Bush administration." He smirked. That smirk. It was the expression of a man who held all the cards. He honestly believed I was trapped. He thought I was weak. He thought I was just a fixture in his house, like the lamp in the corner or the rug in the hallway. Useful, decorative, but ultimately silent. I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at him. "So," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "my options are to share my husband with a woman half my age, or to be divorced." "Exactly," Mark said, checking his watch. "It's a generous offer. Most men would just leave you high and dry. I'm offering you security." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the pot roast at him, though believe me, the thought crossed my mind. Instead, a strange clarity washed over me. It was like a fog lifting. I saw him not as the man I loved, but as a stranger. A cruel, arrogant stranger who had underestimated me for the last time. Okay, I said softly. Mark's smile widened. I knew you'd be reasonable. It's for the best, really. You get to keep your life and I get to be happy. I reached into the junk drawer behind me and pulled out a black ballpoint pen. Click. The sound was sharp in the quiet kitchen. I pulled the papers out of the envelope. Heavy, high-quality bond paper. I flipped to the last page. Petitioner Mark Reynolds. Respondent Linda Reynolds. What are you doing? Mark asked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. I'm making my choice, I said. I didn't hesitate. I didn't shake. I pressed the pen to the paper and signed my name in big, looping cursive letters. Linda Reynolds. I dated it. Then, I pushed the papers back across the table toward him. I choose the divorce, I said calmly. I'm done. Mark looked down at the signature. His eyes bulged. The smug smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated panic. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like he might faint. No, he stammered, reaching for the papers as if he could erase the ink with his bare hands. No, Linda, wait. You clearly misunderstood. I didn't mean. I was just trying to negotiate. You weren't negotiating, Mark. I stood up, looking down at him. You were bullying, and you just bullied the wrong woman. Before I tell you what happened next, how I kicked him out, and exposed his secrets, I need to take you back. You need to understand how we got here. You need to understand the woman I used to be, so you can appreciate the woman I just became. And hey, if you're listening to this and you've ever had someone underestimate you, please do me a favor. Comment, I hear you down below. Let me know I'm not shouting into the void. It means the world to me. Now let's go back 3 months, to when the cracks first started to show. To understand why Mark was so shocked that I signed those papers, you have to understand the dynamic of our marriage. For 15 years, Mark had been the star and I had been the audience. He had been the CEO and I had been the support staff. He genuinely believed that he built our life single-handedly. But memories are funny things. They can be rewritten by ego. Let me take you back 15 years. I wasn't just a housewife then. I was a senior auditor at one of the most prestigious accounting firms in Chicago. I was 29, sharp, ambitious, and I was making nearly double what Mark was making as a junior sales rep. I drove a convertible. I had my own investment portfolio. I was on track to make partner before I turned 35. I met Mark at a networking event. He was charming, full of big ideas and charisma, but he was broke. He had a vision for a logistics consulting firm, but no capital and zero financial literacy. We fell in love. Hard. Fast. He made me laugh. He made me feel like I could relax, like I didn't always have to be the tough girl in the boardroom. When we got married, he came to me with his business plan. Linda, he said, his eyes shining with tears. I can't do this without you. The banks won't loan me the money, but if we use your savings, if you help me run the books, we can build an empire. But I need you focused on the home front so I can hunt for clients. Please, trust me. It was a massive request. He was asking me to give up my career, my identity, my financial independence, to bet on his dream. And because I loved him, because I believed in us, I did it. I resigned. I cashed out my 401k to pay for the office lease. I used my inheritance from my parents, money that was supposed to be my safety net, to buy the servers and the software. For the first 5 years, I was the unseen engine of his success. I sat at our dining room table until 2 a.m., breastfeeding Jason with one arm and doing Mark's payroll with the other. I caught tax errors that would have bankrupted him. I negotiated with vendors to lower costs. I was his CFO, his HR department, and his janitor, all for a salary of $0. I remember one night specifically. Mark had just landed his first big contract. He came home with a bottle of champagne. We drank it out of coffee mugs because we hadn't run the dishwasher. I couldn't have done this without you, Lynn, he whispered, kissing my forehead. This is our victory. You're my partner in everything. I held on to those words. I cherished them. But as the company grew, Mark's memory faded. Once the money started really rolling in, he hired a real accounting firm. He hired a flashy HR director. He slowly pushed me out of the business operations. You shouldn't have to worry your pretty head about numbers anymore, he told me one day, taking the files out of my hands. Just enjoy the life I'm giving you. Go to the spa. Take care of the boys. It sounded like kindness, but it was a demotion. The we became I. I bought this house. I paid for that vacation. My money. He conveniently forgot that his money grew from the seed of my sacrifice. He started treating me less like a partner, and more like an employee he couldn't fire. The shift became undeniable about 3 months ago. We were at an industry awards dinner. Mark was receiving the Entrepreneur of the Year award. I was sitting at the table, clapping until my hands hurt, beaming with pride. After the ceremony, I went to the bar to get a glass of water. Mark was there, surrounded by a group of younger, hungry-looking businessmen. They didn't see me approach. "Your wife is lovely, Mark," one of them said. Mark laughed, swirling his scotch. "Yeah, Linda's great. She keeps the house standing. But man, sometimes I wish she had a bit more drive. You know? She's been out of the game so long. She doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. She lives in a bubble I pay for. Honestly, she'd be lost without me. She wouldn't know how to pay an electric bill if I didn't set up the autopay." The men laughed. A cruel, bonding laughter. I stood there, frozen. The ice in my glass rattled against the sides. I was the one who set up the autopay. I was the one who managed the household budget so he could buy his fancy suits. I was the one who had audited Fortune 500 companies while he was still struggling to figure out how to use Excel. I wanted to walk over there and dump my water on his head. I wanted to scream my credentials in his face. But I didn't. I swallowed the humiliation. I thought about Jason, who was struggling with algebra, and Tyler, who needed braces. I told myself it was just the alcohol talking. I told myself to be the good wife and not make a scene. That was the moment the seed of resentment was planted. I realized then that my husband didn't respect me. He tolerated me, and tolerance is a very fragile thing. I walked back to the table, put a smile on my face, and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. But that night, as I lay in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling, I started to wonder. If I was so useless, why was he trying so hard to keep me in the dark? After that night at the awards dinner, the blinders were off. I started noticing things. Little things at first, then bigger, more alarming things. It was like living with a stranger who was wearing my husband's face. The first sign was the vanity. Mark had always been a decent-looking man. Tall, broad shoulders, a bit of gray at the temples that distinguished him. But suddenly, he was obsessed with his appearance in a way that screamed midlife crisis. He started buying designer suits that cost $3,000 a pop. He joined an elite gym across town, the kind that costs more per month than our grocery budget. He claimed he needed to network while he worked out, even though he had a perfectly good treadmill and weights in the basement. Then came the scent. Mark had worn the same cedarwood aftershave for 10 years. I loved it. Smelled like home. But one Tuesday, he came home smelling like a walking department store perfume counter. It was musky, heavy, undeniably trendy. "You changed your cologne?" I asked, leaning in to sniff his shirt collar as he dodged my hug. "God, Linda, stop sniffing me like a bloodhound," he snapped, pulling away. "It's savage. All the guys at the office are wearing it. Can't a man update his style without an inquisition?" "I was just asking," I said, hurt. "Well, stop asking. You're suffocating me," he muttered, heading upstairs to shower immediately, which was another new habit. He used to come home and crash on the couch. Now he went straight to the shower to scrub away the day, or the evidence. Then there was the phone guarding. This was the classic cliché, but it was shocking to see it happen in real life. Mark used to be careless with his phone. He'd leave it on the kitchen island, face up, while he went to play catch with the boys. I knew his passcode. 1234. Simple. Now the phone was glued to his palm. If he went to the bathroom, the phone went with him. If he took out the trash, the phone was in his pocket. He even installed a privacy screen protector so I couldn't see the notifications even if I was sitting right next to him. One evening we were watching a movie. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Instinctively, I reached for it to hand it to him. "Don't touch it!" he yelled, snatching it so fast he knocked over a bowl of popcorn. I pulled my hand back as if I'd been burned. The boys looked up from their iPads, eyes wide. "Work security protocols," Mark muttered, his face flushing red. "Client confidentiality. If you enter the wrong passcode, it wipes the data." "I can't risk it. I wasn't going to unlock it, Mark. I was just handing it to you. Just let me handle my own devices," he grumbled. But the moment that truly shattered my denial, the moment I knew this wasn't just a phase, happened 2 weeks ago. It was a Sunday morning. Mark was golfing, or so he said. I was cleaning out his car, the luxury sedan he insisted on leasing. He treated the car like a dumpster, leaving coffee cups and wrappers everywhere. I was vacuuming under the passenger seat, jamming the nozzle into the tight space between the seat and the center console. I heard a rattle, something plastic being sucked up, but getting stuck. I turned off the vacuum and reached my fingers into the crevice. I pulled out a small, glittering object. It was an earring, not a diamond stud, not a classy pearl like the ones I wore. It was a long, dangly thing with cheap rhinestones and a bright pink feather. It looked like something a teenager would buy at a mall kiosk. It was tacky. It was loud. And it was definitely, absolutely, not mine. I sat there in the driver's seat of my husband's car, holding that cheap piece of jewelry in my trembling palm. The sun was beating down through the windshield, but I felt freezing cold. My stomach dropped to my feet. When Mark came home, tossing his golf bag into the corner, I was waiting in the kitchen. I held the earring up. "Mark, who's this?" He didn't even flinch. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed. He glanced at the earring and let out a dry, dismissive laugh. Oh, that must belong to Dave's daughter. I gave Dave a ride to the mechanic last week, and his kid was in the back seat. She's got all that glittery junk. Must have kicked it under the seat. I stared at him. Dave's daughter sat in the front seat? I asked, my voice tight, because I found this deep under the front passenger seat. She probably threw it up there. Who knows? Kids do weird stuff. Why are you obsessing over trash? Just toss it. He walked past me, opening the fridge to grab a beer. I stood there, clutching the earring so hard the metal post dug into my skin. Dave didn't have a daughter. Dave had 3 sons. I had been to Dave's house for a barbecue in July. I had watched his 3 boys jump on the trampoline. Mark had lied to my face. He had lied effortlessly, without blinking, without a shred of remorse. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was so disconnected from his life that I wouldn't remember his best friend's children. That was the moment the sadness ended. The grief evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard calculation. He thought I was just a nagging housewife. He forgot that I used to audit corporations for a living. If there were cracks in the books, I would find them. And if there were cracks in my marriage, I was going to find the source. I didn't toss the earring. I put it in my pocket. It wasn't trash. It was Exhibit A. That night, Mark fell asleep quickly, snoring loudly with the arrogance of a man who believes he is untouchable. I lay beside him for an hour, listening to the rhythm of his breathing, feeling a wave of repulsion every time he exhaled. At 1 a.m., I slipped out of bed. I went down to my office. I use quotes because, over the years, my workspace had become the household storage room. My desk was covered in Jason's hockey gear, piles of unpaid bills, and Tyler's unfinished Lego projects. I cleared a space, sat down, and opened my old laptop. I cracked my knuckles. It had been years since I did a forensic audit. But it's like riding a bike. You never forget how to follow the money. Mark thought he was clever, changing his phone password. But he was lazy with his financial security. We had a joint checking account for household expenses, but I knew he had opened personal credit cards. He had switched all the statements to paperless about 6 months ago, claiming he was saving the environment. He forgot one crucial detail. I was the primary administrator on our home Wi-Fi network. I was also the one who set up his original email recovery questions 10 years ago because he kept forgetting them. Question: what was the name of your first pet? Answer: Buster. Question: what is your mother's maiden name? Answer: Collins. Took me less than 10 minutes to reset his email password. I logged in. The inbox loaded, and the floodgates opened. I didn't look for love letters first. In a divorce, emotions are messy, but numbers are absolute. Numbers don't lie. Numbers are the only truth that holds up in a court of law. I went straight to the trash folder. People always delete the incriminating emails but forget to empty the trash. There were dozens of confirmations. Open table reservation for 2 at the Onyx Room, Tuesday 7 p.m. Ticketmaster, 2 front row seats to the Beyoncé concert, $800. Expedia weekend booking at the Vineyard B&B, Napa Valley. My hand shook on the mouse. The Napa trip coincided with his regional sales conference. He had called me from that trip complaining about how boring the seminars were. He was lying in bed with her while complaining to me. Then I searched for financial alerts. I found statements for a Visa Black Card I didn't know existed. The cardholder name was Mark Reynolds, but there was an authorized user, Tiffany Miller. I pulled up the PDF statements. The spending was nauseating. Victoria's Secret, $450. Sephora, $300. Tiffany & Company, the jewelry store, not the mistress, $2,200. I felt sick, physically sick. I looked at the dates. The jewelry purchase was on our anniversary. He had given me a card. Just a card. He had told me things were tight this year because of the market downturn. But then I found something that made the room spin. I had to grab the edge of the desk to keep from falling off my chair. I logged into our investment portfolio. Mark handled the trades now, but my name was still on the account. I navigated to the sub-accounts labeled Jason College Fund and Tyler College Fund. These were sacred accounts. We had started them when the boys were born. I had put every cent of my inheritance into them. Mark's bonuses went there. It was supposed to be their future, tuition, dorms, books. I clicked on Jason's account. It should have had nearly $85,000 in it. The balance read $112. I gasped, a strangled sound escaping my throat. I clicked on Tyler's account. Balance: $1,500. Gone. Over $100,000. Gone. I checked the transaction history, my eyes blurring with tears of rage. Large withdrawals had been made over the last 6 months. Wire transfers. Wire transfer, $15,000. Recipient: Tiffany Luxury Apartments, LLC. Memo: security deposit and lease. Wire transfer, $8,500. Recipient, Diamond District Jewelers. Wire transfer, $5,000. Date, October 12th. I stared at that date. October 12th was Tyler's birthday. Mark had told Tyler, "Sorry, buddy. Daddy's work is slow. We can't do the big Disney trip this year. Maybe next time." He had looked our 10-year-old son in the eyes, watched his face fall with disappointment, and pleaded poverty. And on that exact same day, he had wired $5,000 to his mistress. The rage that filled me wasn't hot. It wasn't the fiery anger of a scorned woman. It was ice cold. It was the absolute zero of a mother whose cubs had been attacked. He hadn't just cheated on me, that I could survive. He had stolen from our children. He had looted their future to pay for a studio apartment for a 20-something girl who liked pink feathers. This was financial abuse. This was fraud. This was embezzlement of marital assets. I didn't close the laptop. I started downloading every statement, every receipt, every email. I organized them into folders labeled evidence. I backed everything up to the cloud, then to an external hard drive, then to a USB stick that I taped underneath the drawer of my desk. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face. I looked at the photo of Mark and me on the desk, taken 10 years ago on a beach vacation. I picked it up and placed it face down. He thought he was dealing with a housewife. He thought he was dealing with a woman who didn't understand finance. He forgot that I was the one who taught him how to read a balance sheet. I wasn't just going to divorce him. I was going to destroy him. I was going to leave him with nothing but his cheap cologne and his lies. I wiped my tears. I had work to do. Before I could execute my plan, I needed to check one last box. I needed to see if there was anyone in Mark's corner who still had a moral compass. I needed to know if I had any allies in this family. I called Martha, Mark's mother. Martha lived in a pristine condo downtown. She was the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and believed that appearances were the only currency that mattered. We had always had a strained relationship. She thought I was too career-focused when I was working, and then too frumpy when I became a housewife. I could never win. But she was a grandmother. She loved Jason and Tyler. Surely, if she knew her son was robbing her grandson's blind, she would be outraged. I invited her over for tea 2 days after finding the bank statements. I sent the boys to a movie so we could talk privately. Martha arrived looking immaculate in a cream Chanel suit, scanning my living room for dust as she walked in. "The hydrangeas out front look a bit wilted, Linda," was her greeting. "You really need to water them more." "Hello to you too, Martha," I said, leading her to the kitchen. I poured her Earl Grey tea into the good china. I didn't beat around the bush. I was too tired for small talk. "Martha," I said, sitting down across from her, "I'm worried about Mark. He's been distant. He's not coming home some nights, and I found evidence he's seeing someone else." I watched her face closely. I expected shock. I expected her to gasp, to reach for my hand. Instead, Martha took a slow sip of her tea, set the cup down with a delicate clink, and looked at me with a pitying, almost bored expression. "Oh, Linda," she sighed, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Don't be so naive." I blinked. "Excuse me? Mark is a successful man," she said, as if explaining gravity to a toddler. "He is under immense pressure. He runs a company. He provides this lavish lifestyle for you. Men like him have needs. They need an outlet. Sometimes they wander. It's not personal. It's just biology." I stared at her, my mouth slightly open. "Not personal, Martha? He's sleeping with a woman half his age. He's having an affair." "Well," she sniffed, looking me up and down with critical eyes. "Look at yourself, dear. You've let yourself go a bit, haven't you? You're always in those sweatpants. You look tired. A man like Mark needs excitement. He needs to be admired. Maybe if you put a little more effort into keeping him happy, lost 10 pounds, dyed your hair, he wouldn't need to look elsewhere." My blood boiled. "Are you blaming me for his cheating?" "I'm just saying," she waved a manicured hand, "that marriage is about compromise. You have a nice house. You don't have to work. You should be grateful. Don't blow up a good life over a little indiscretion. Just turn a blind eye. That's what women of our status do. We maintain the family dignity." I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. She wasn't surprised. She probably already knew. "It's not just an indiscretion, Martha," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "He drained the boys' college funds. He stole Jason and Tyler's money. Over $100,000. He used it to pay for his mistress's apartment." For a split second, I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. Her hand paused on her teacup, but then the mask slammed back into place. "I'm sure he has a plan to put it back," she said stiffly. "Mark is good with money. You're probably misreading the statements. You always were too dramatic about numbers. Besides, Jason is smart. He can get a scholarship. Mark deserves to spend his money how he sees fit. She stood up, brushing imaginary crumbs off her skirt. My advice? Fix your hair. Cook him a nice dinner. And stop snooping. You'll thank me later. Don't be the bitter ex-wife, Linda. It's not a good look on you. As she walked out of my house, her heels clicking on the hardwood, I realized the rot went deep. Mark wasn't an anomaly. He was a product of his upbringing. He had been raised to believe he was the center of the universe, and any woman in his orbit existed solely to serve him. Martha was an enabler. She was a co-conspirator in my misery. She would sacrifice her own grandson's future to protect her son's ego. I locked the door behind her and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. I was completely alone. My husband was a thief, my mother-in-law was an accomplice, and my marriage was a lie. But realizing I was alone was the most liberating feeling I'd had in years. I didn't have to consult anyone. I didn't have to compromise. I didn't have to be nice anymore. I walked back to my office and printed 2 copies of every single document I had found. One set for my lawyer, Sarah, whom I had secretly retained that morning, and one set for the special surprise I was planning for Mark. Martha wanted me to fix my hair? Fine. I fixed my hair. I put on my war paint. And then I'd show her exactly what a dramatic woman could do to her precious son's reputation. Let's go back to the kitchen table, where the ink on the divorce papers was still drying. Mark was staring at me, his face a mask of pure terror. The arrogant smirk was gone, replaced by the look of a man who realizes he has just stepped off a cliff he didn't know was there. You signed it? He whispered, his voice cracking. Linda, stop. I was trying to make a point. I didn't actually want a divorce. I was bluffing. I stood up, towering over him as he slumped in his chair. I felt 10 feet tall. You gave me a choice, Mark. Accept your mistress or break up. I chose to break up. You should be happy. You're free. Go be with Tiffany. Go find your vitality. But the house, he stammered, looking around the kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. The boys. Linda, be reasonable. You can't survive without me. You don't have a job. Who is going to pay the bills? Who is going to fix the car? I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. I fixed the dishwasher last week while you were working late. I balanced our budget for 15 years. I think I can manage. No, this is my house. Mark stood up, his face flushing red, trying to regain some dominance. I pay the mortgage. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I corrected him, my voice razor sharp. The deed is in both our names. But I have some news for you. While you were busy buying Tiffany that diamond pendant with Tyler's birthday money, I was busy hiring a lawyer. Mark froze. What? My lawyer, Sarah, filed an emergency motion this morning, I said, savoring every word. Based on documented proof of your adultery and, more importantly, financial fraud, specifically the embezzlement of our children's custodial accounts. The judge granted a temporary exclusive occupancy order. You are to vacate the premises immediately to prevent further dissipation of marital assets. Dissipation of assets? Mark repeated, looking like he was going to be sick. You looked at the accounts. I looked at everything, Mark. The apartment lease, the jewelry, the Napa trip. I have it all. I walked over to the hallway closet. And because I'm efficient, unlike you, I saved you the trouble of packing. I opened the closet door. Inside were 2 large suitcases, bulging at the seams. I had packed them that morning while he was in the shower. I dragged them out and kicked them toward him. They slid across the hardwood floor and hit his expensive Italian shoes with a satisfying thud. What is this? He asked, looking at the bags with horror. Your clothes, your shoes, your toiletries. And, of course, that new colonial love so much. I said. Get out. You can't do this, he shouted, his voice rising. This is insane. You're reacting emotionally. I am reacting legally, I said. If you don't leave in the next 5 minutes, I call the police. And I don't think you want a squad car parked out front. What would the neighbors think? What would your clients think? Mark looked at me, his eyes darting between the door, the papers, and my face. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before. Resolve. He realized that the doormat he had walked on for 15 years had suddenly turned into a bed of nails. He tried to switch tactics. The anger vanished, replaced by a slippery, desperate charm. He stepped toward me, reaching out a hand. Baby, listen, he cooed. I messed up. Okay, I messed up big time. But we can fix this. You know I love you. Tiffany means nothing. She's just a fling, a midlife crisis thing. It's over. I'll end it today. Just let's talk about this. I swatted his hand away. She meant enough for you to steal from your own children. She meant enough for you to humiliate me. It's too late, Mark. I was your husband, he pleaded. You were, I said. Now you're a liability. And Mark, I'm a much better accountant than you are a liar. I pointed to the door. Out. Now. He looked at my face and saw that the door to reconciliation wasn't just closed. It was bricked over. He grabbed the suitcases, his knuckles white. He muttered curses under his breath, calling me names I won't repeat. He dragged the bags to the front door. He struggled with the handle, his dignity in tatters. You're making a huge mistake, Linda. He spat as he opened the door to the cool evening air. You'll come crawling back when the bills come in. You'll see. You're nothing without me. Give my regards to Tiffany, I said calmly. I hope she likes pot roast. I slammed the door in his face. I threw the deadbolt. Then the second lock. Then the security chain. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I listened. I heard the thump-thump of the suitcases going down the front steps. I heard the car door slam. I heard the engine rev aggressively as he peeled out of the driveway. I didn't cry. I felt a surge of adrenaline so strong my hands were shaking. I had done it. The parasite was gone. But then the silence of the house settled around me, and I realized the hardest part was just beginning. I turned around and looked up the stairs. Two shadows were standing at the top landing. Jason and Tyler were watching. My heart shattered into a million pieces seeing them there. Tyler, my sweet 10-year-old, was clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, Rex, looking absolutely terrified. Jason, my 16-year-old, stood with his arms crossed, leaning against the banister, his face unreadable, but his eyes dark. I had wanted to protect them. I had wanted to do this quietly, while they were at school. But Mark's arrogance had forced my hand. I walked to the bottom of the stairs, trying to stop my hands from trembling. Boys, come here. They came down slowly. Tyler ran to me and buried his face in my stomach. Jason walked behind him, stiff and silent. I led them to the living room and we sat on the oversized beige sectional. Was that Dad? Tyler asked, his voice muffled against my sweater. Why did he have suitcases? Is he going on a trip? I took a deep breath. I had read books on how to tell kids about divorce. Keep it simple. Don't blame. Reassure them. But how do you not blame a man who stole their college money? Dad isn't going on a trip, buddy, I said, stroking Tyler's hair. Dad and we are going to live apart for a while. Is it because of the lady? Tyler asked. I froze. I looked at Jason. He was staring at the floor, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. What lady? I asked gently. Jason looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. Mom, stop. We know. You know. I whispered. We know about Tiffany, Jason said, his voice surprisingly deep, sounding so much older than 16. He sounded tired. How? Jason pulled his phone out of his pocket. He opened Instagram and navigated to a profile. He handed the phone to me. She's not exactly private, Mom. Her profile is public. The algorithm suggested her to me because she follows Dad. She tags him in stories. Date night with my silver fox. She posts photos of the gifts. I took the phone. There it was. Tiffany_Miller_XO. Blonde, pouting lips, overly filtered photos. And there was Mark, my husband, smiling like a fool in a selfie, holding a glass of wine, kissing her cheek. I scrolled down. Photo of a diamond necklace. Caption, he spoils me. #blessed. Date, 2 weeks ago. I looked at Jason, horrified. How long have you known? A month, Jason said, his voice cracking slightly. I saw a text pop up on his phone when we were driving to practice. It said, can't wait to see you, baby. It wasn't your number. I searched the number. Then I found her Insta. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, tears finally spilling over. I didn't want to hurt you, Jason said, looking away. I thought maybe it was just a phase. I thought he would stop. I didn't want to ruin everything. I pulled Jason into a fierce hug, dragging Tyler into the pile. Oh, honey, you shouldn't have had to carry that secret. That wasn't your job. You are a kid. You are supposed to worry about geometry and baseball, not your father's girlfriend. Tyler looked up, tears streaming down his face. Is Dad leaving us because we were bad? No, I said fiercely, grabbing his shoulders. No, Tyler, listen to me. This is not your fault. This is 100% Dad's fault. He made bad choices. Did he steal my birthday money? Tyler asked. His voice was so small, it nearly broke me in half. I froze again. I hadn't told them that part. I hadn't wanted them to know that part. I heard you yelling, Tyler whispered. When I was on the stairs, you said he bought a pendant with my birthday money. I looked at my 2 sons. I couldn't lie to them. Mark had lied to them enough for both of us. Yes, sweetie, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. He did. He took money from your savings accounts. But listen to me closely. I promise you, I swear on my life, I am going to get every single cent back. I will work day and night. I will fight him in court. You will go to college. You will have what you need. Mom is going to fix this. Tyler buried his face in my chest and started to sob. I hate him. I hate him. Jason looked out the window where Mark's car had driven away. His jaw was set tight, a muscle jumping in his cheek. He tried to text me just now, Jason said quietly. What did he say? He said you were having a mental breakdown. He said you were hysterical and that we should pack a bag and come with him to the apartment. And what do you think? I asked, holding my breath. Jason looked me in the eye. I texted him back. I said, don't bother. I saw the pictures, Dad. You're a loser. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My son wasn't confused. He was angry, and he was on my side. Okay, I said, wiping my face. Okay, we are going to be okay. But right now I don't want to cook. And I definitely don't want pot roast. Pizza? Tyler asked, sniffing. 3 large pizzas, I declared. Extra pepperoni and breadsticks. And soda. On a school night, we sat on the living room floor that night, eating out of the boxes, watching Marvel movies. It was a small act of rebellion, a reclaiming of our space. The house felt emptier without Mark's booming voice and his constant demands for service. But it also felt lighter. The toxicity was gone. I looked at my boys, their mouths covered in tomato sauce, and I made a silent vow. Mark thought he could strip us of our assets and our dignity. He thought he could walk away to his fantasy life without consequences. He was wrong. I had the house, I had the kids, and I had the evidence. Phase 1 was complete. Eviction. Phase 2 was about to begin, the reality check. Mark was about to find out that living with a high-maintenance mistress in a studio apartment wasn't quite the dream he imagined. A week passed. A week of silence from the divorce courts, but plenty of noise from the gossip mill. I wish I could say I was a fly on the wall in Tiffany's apartment, but I didn't need to be. We live in a connected world, and word travels fast in the suburbs. Plus, Mark, in his infinite stupidity and arrogance, hadn't removed me from the shared family Uber Eats account yet. I watched the decline of his paradise through digital receipts. It was almost poetic. For the first 2 days, he tried to maintain the illusion. Tuesday, the sushi bar. Order total $120. Wednesday, Prime Steakhouse delivery. Order total $150. He was trying to show Tiffany that nothing had changed, that he was still the high roller. But I knew exactly how much cash he had access to. I had frozen the joint checking account the morning after I kicked him out. His personal credit cards were near their limit from all the gifts he had bought her. By Thursday, the orders changed. Thursday, McDonald's. 2 Big Macs and a Happy Meal. Friday, Taco Bell. $15. Saturday, no order. Then I got a call from a mutual friend. Sarah, not my lawyer Sarah, another Sarah, who worked in the same corporate building where Tiffany was a marketing intern. Linda, Sarah whispered into the phone, clearly hiding in a bathroom stall. You didn't hear this from me, but Mark looks terrible. Do tell, I said, leaning back in my kitchen chair, sipping my morning coffee. I felt remarkably refreshed. I had slept 8 hours for the first time in months. Apparently, Tiffany's luxury apartment is a studio, Sarah giggled. The leasing photos used a wide-angle lens. It's basically a shoebox. And Mark, well, he's been wearing the same 2 suits all week. They're wrinkled. He looks like he slept in them. He probably did, I said. Or on the floor. And Tiffany? Sarah continued. She's been complaining to everyone in the break room loudly. She said Mark snores like a freight train and keeps her awake. She said he expects her to cook dinner when she gets home, and she doesn't even know how to boil an egg. She told the receptionist, I didn't sign up to be a housewife. I laughed out loud. It was a deep belly laugh that felt like healing. Of course, he did. Mark hadn't cooked a meal, done a load of laundry, or picked up a wet towel in 15 years. He expected a hot dinner on the table at 6:30 p.m. sharp. He expected his shirts laundered, starched, and hung in color-coded order. He expected a magical house fairy to manage his life. Tiffany wasn't a house fairy. She was a high-maintenance influencer wannabe who was dating Mark for the lifestyle she thought he had. She wanted the dinners and the gifts, not the dirty socks and the snoring. Sarah said they were arguing in the parking lot yesterday, the friend continued. Screaming match. Something about him not having his car. Ah, yes, I smiled, petting the dog. The lease on the Mercedes is in my name. My credit score was always better than his. I reported it as unauthorized use to the leasing company on Wednesday. They probably repossessed it while he was at work. You are ruthless, Sarah said, sounding impressed and a little scared. I'm just getting started, I replied. That evening my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. Finally, I picked up, putting it on speaker so Jason could hear at his request. What do you want, Mark? Linda, please. His voice sounded ragged. He sounded exhausted. The smooth, arrogant tone from a week ago was gone. I can't live like this. The apartment is the size of a closet. The AC is broken, and it's 80 degrees in here. And the car? Did you really have the car towed? Seriously, it's my car. Read the lease agreement, Mark. I can't have unauthorized drivers operating my vehicle. Liability issues. You understand. I have to take the bus to work, he whined. Do you know how humiliating that is? I'm a vice president. Former VP. If you don't get your sales numbers up, I reminded him cheerfully. How's Tiffany? Is she enjoying the public transit lifestyle? She's stressed, he muttered. She says the apartment is too small for 2 people. She needs her space. Look, can I just come by to get some more clothes? Maybe grab a decent meal? The boys miss me, right? I looked at Jason. He shook his head vigorously and made a gagging motion, slicing his finger across his throat. The boys are fine, I said. In fact, we're great. And no, you can't come by. You wanted a new life, Mark. You wanted the younger woman and the excitement. Now you have it. Enjoy the bus. Enjoy the studio apartment. Enjoy the vitality. Linda, I'm starving, he whispered. And for a second, he sounded like a pathetic child. She doesn't cook. She ordered pizza 3 nights in a row. My heartburn is killing me. Welcome to equality, I said. Better learn how to use a microwave. Or maybe Tiffany can cook you some of that passion you were talking about. I hung up. Mark was beginning to realize that the grass wasn't greener on the other side. It was just artificial turf painted over a septic tank. But he hadn't hit rock bottom yet. Not even close. Because while he was worrying about his laundry and his commute, I was preparing the real blow. I had a meeting scheduled with my lawyer the next morning. Mark was about to find out that breaking up wasn't just about sleeping in different beds. It was about dividing the spoils of war. And then there was a new rumor starting to circulate. A rumor that Tiffany had started. Something about a baby. Mark was desperate. Tiffany was greedy. And things were about to get very, very messy. The morning of our first legal mediation meeting, the sky was a bruised purple, threatening a storm that never quite broke. It felt appropriate. I sat in the conference room of Sarah's law firm, a sleek, glass-walled office that smelled of lemon polish and billable hours. Sarah, my lawyer, was a shark in a silk blouse. She had reviewed the files I downloaded, the evidence folder, and her only comment had been a low, impressed whistle. He's dead in the water, Linda, she had said. But expect him to thrash. Narcissists don't go down quietly. Mark arrived 10 minutes late. He walked in with a lawyer who looked like he advertised on the back of a bus bench. Mark was wearing one of his older suits, wrinkled at the elbows, and he looked tired. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had a nervous tick in his jaw I hadn't seen since the recession of 2008. He didn't look at me. He sat down, opened a frantic-looking folder, and let his lawyer speak. My client, the lawyer began, his voice nasal and irritating, is seeking a 50-50 split of all marital assets, including the marital home. Furthermore, given that Mr. Reynolds is currently experiencing temporary housing instability, he is requesting spousal support until his living situation stabilizes. I almost choked on my water. Spousal support? From me? The woman whose inheritance he had pillaged? Sarah didn't blink. Mr. Reynolds is currently employed as a VP. Mrs. Reynolds has been a homemaker for 15 years. In what universe does she owe him support? In a universe where she has a substantial inheritance trust and he has expenses, Mark's lawyer said. Mark finally looked at me. There was a desperate, malicious glint in his eyes. We know about the trust fund, Linda. I know your parents left you more than what you put into the company. I want half. It's marital property. Commingled assets. It's not commingled, Sarah cut in sharply. It's in a separate trust. But let's talk about what is commingled. Let's talk about the $100,000 missing from the children's custodial accounts. She slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a spreadsheet I had created, color-coded and terrifyingly accurate. It showed every transfer to Tiffany Miller and luxury vendors. Mark turned pale. He grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. This is an invasion of privacy, he sputtered. She hacked my accounts. She accessed accounts and accounts where she is a guardian, Sarah corrected. And in the state of Illinois, dissipation of marital assets for an extramarital affair is a serious offense. We aren't just looking at divorce, Mark. We are looking at potential fraud charges if you don't cooperate. I thought that would end it. I thought he would fold. But I underestimated Tiffany's influence on him. Or maybe I underestimated how low he was willing to sink. Mark leaned forward, a sneer replacing his fear. You want to play hardball, Linda? Fine. Let's talk about custody. Let's talk about the environment at home. My mother tells me you've been unstable, depressed, drinking. That is a lie, I said, my voice icy. Is it? And there's one more thing, Mark said, dropping the bomb he had clearly been saving. Tiffany is pregnant. The room went silent. The air left my lungs as if I'd been punched in the gut. That's right, Mark said, seeing the shock on my face. She's carrying my child, a sibling for Jason and Tyler. And the courts look very favorably on fathers who need to provide for a newborn. If you try to destroy me financially, you are taking food out of an innocent baby's mouth. Do you really want to be that monster, Linda? I stared at him. A baby? He had destroyed our family, stolen our son's college money, and now he was starting a new family with the woman who helped him do it. And he was using that unborn child as a human shield to extort money from me. I felt a wave of nausea, but I forced it down. I looked at Sarah. She gave me a subtle nod. Don't react. Don't give him the satisfaction. We will require proof of paternity and medical records, Sarah said calmly. Until then, get out of our office. Mark stood up, buttoning his jacket with trembling fingers. You'll see. Mom is already knitting booties. You're going to lose Linda. You're old news. Tiffany is the future. He walked out. I sat there for a long time, staring at the grain of the wood table. Is it true? I whispered. Can he take the house because of a new baby? It complicates things, Sarah admitted, her face grim. Judges don't like to leave newborns homeless. If she's really pregnant, and if he claims poverty, we might have a fight on our hands. I drove home in a daze. My mind was racing. Pregnant. Tiffany was pregnant. Felt like the final nail in the coffin. But then my accountant brain kicked in. Wait, I remembered the credit card statements. I remembered the charges from 3 weeks ago. There was a charge at a sushi restaurant. High-end sushi, raw fish. And the week before that, a charge at a wine bar, 2 bottles of Cabernet. And the pharmacy charges? Not for prenatal vitamins. For retin-A cream, something pregnant women are strictly told to avoid. I gripped the steering wheel. Something didn't add up. Mark said she was pregnant. His mother was knitting booties. But Tiffany was eating sashimi and drinking heavy reds. I wasn't just a scorned wife anymore. I was an auditor, and I smelled a discrepancy in the books. The pregnancy was the variable that didn't fit the equation. If Tiffany was pregnant, she was taking a massive risk with her lifestyle choices. Or she was lying. I spent the next 2 nights doing what I do best. Digging. Mark had blocked me on social media, and Tiffany's profile was now set to private. Probably on Mark's advice after Jason saw the photos. But the internet is written in ink, not pencil. Nothing is ever truly hidden. I created a burner account on Instagram. I used a stock photo of a landscape and named it Chicago Foodie 999. Then I started searching. I didn't search for Tiffany Miller directly. I searched for her friends. I remembered a photo Jason had shown me earlier. A group shot of Tiffany with 2 other girls at a brunch. One of them was tagged Jessica Styles Chicago. I went to Jessica's profile. It was public. And there, in her stories from 24 hours ago, was a video. It was a boomerang of clinking glasses. Caption: Girls' night out at Tiffany_, killing the tequila shots. I paused the video and zoomed in. There was Tiffany, in a tight black dress, throwing back a shot of tequila with salt and lime. Pregnant women don't do tequila shots. So, the pregnancy was a lie. A leverage play. A way to guilt me into a settlement and get Mark's mother on board. It was despicable, but it was also a tactical error because now I knew they were perjuring themselves. But I kept digging. Why would she lie? Was it just for Mark's money? But Mark didn't have money anymore. I had frozen it. She had to know he was broke. Why stick around? Unless Mark wasn't her only iron in the fire. I went back to Google. I searched Tiffany Miller Chicago Marketing. I found her LinkedIn. It was polished, impressive. But then I saw a recommendation from a year ago. Tiffany is a dedicated professional. Robert Vance, CEO of Vance Logistics. Vance Logistics. That sounded familiar. It was a competitor to Mark's firm, but much, much bigger. A real empire. I clicked on Robert Vance's profile. He was handsome, older, maybe early 50s, distinguished silver hair, kind eyes. He looked like the kind of man Mark desperately wanted to be, but never quite achieved. I went to Facebook. I searched Robert Vance. His profile was locked down, but his cover photo was public. It was a photo of him and a woman on a boat in Lake Michigan. They were smiling, the wind in their hair. The woman was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses, but I recognized that chin. I recognized that smile. It was Tiffany. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen. Were they dating? Was she cheating on Mark with this Robert guy? I zoomed in on the photo. I looked at Tiffany's left hand, resting on Robert's chest. There was a ring, a massive pear-shaped diamond ring, and a wedding band. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I opened a new tab and searched Robert Vance marriage license, Cook County. Nothing. I tried Robert Vance marriage announcement. And there it was, a small blurb in a society column from 3 years ago. Tech magnate Robert Vance weds Tiffany Miller in private ceremony in Tuscany. They were married. Tiffany wasn't Mark's girlfriend. She wasn't his mistress. She was a married woman. She was Robert Vance's wife. My brain spun trying to put the pieces together. She was married to a multimillionaire CEO. So why was she with Mark? Mark was a small fish compared to Robert. Then it hit me. Mark was the side piece. Mark was the boy toy. Mark was the one she went to for the thrill, for the ego boost, while her husband was busy running a corporation. And she was using Mark's money, my children's money, to fund a secret apartment where she could meet him without her husband finding out. The Tiffany luxury apartment wasn't her home. It was her love nest, her hideout. And the pregnancy? If she was telling Mark she was pregnant, she was trapping him. But did Robert know? I looked at Robert's photo again. He looked kind. He looked happy. He looked completely oblivious. I realized then that I wasn't the only victim in this story. There was another person being played for a fool. A man who probably thought his marriage was perfect, just like I had. I sat back in my chair, the glow of the laptop illuminating the dark room. A plan began to form in my mind. It was dangerous. It was bold. And it was going to require me to step out of my comfort zone and blow this entire charade sky high. I needed to meet Robert Vance. I tracked Robert down the old-fashioned way. I called his executive assistant at Vance Logistics and claimed I was a forensic accountant conducting a routine audit on a vendor partner, which wasn't entirely a lie in spirit. I asked for 15 minutes of his time to discuss a sensitive discrepancy involving a mutual associate. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near his office in the Loop. Neutral ground. When I walked in, I recognized him immediately. He looked even better in person than in the photos. He had a presence, calm, authoritative but with weary eyes. He stood up when he saw me, buttoning his suit jacket. "Mrs. Reynolds?" he asked, extending a hand. "I'm Robert Vance." My assistant said this was urgent. "It is?" I said, shaking his hand. "Please sit down, and call me Linda." We ordered coffees. I waited until the waitress left before I pulled out my manila envelope. I was getting very good at carrying these envelopes. "Mr. Vance." "Robert." I started, my voice steady. "I don't know how to say this gently, so I'm just going to say it. I believe our spouses are knowing each other very well." Robert blinked. He took a sip of his black coffee, his expression unchanging. "I'm sorry, I don't follow. My husband, Mark Reynolds. He left me 2 weeks ago for a woman named Tiffany Miller. A woman he claims to be his girlfriend. A woman he claims is pregnant with his child." Robert set his cup down. The ceramic clinked loudly against the saucer. "My wife's name is Tiffany Vance. Her maiden name was Miller." "Yes," I said. "And I believe she is living a double life." I slid the photos across the table. The screenshots from Instagram before she went private, the receipts for the apartment, the photos Jason had taken. Robert picked them up. His hands were large and steady. But as he flipped through the images, Mark and Tiffany kissing, Mark and Tiffany at the apartment, Mark buying her jewelry, his face went gray. It was the color of old ash. He stared at a photo of Tiffany wearing the pendant Mark had bought with Tyler's birthday money. "She told me her grandmother gave her this," Robert whispered. His voice was hollow. "She said it was a family heirloom. My husband bought it 3 weeks ago," I said gently, "with money stolen from my son's college fund." Robert closed his eyes. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "I travel," he said quietly. "I travel 3 weeks out of the month. Asia, Europe." She said she was lonely. She said she needed a studio space for her art projects. "I pay the rent on a studio in the city." "This isn't an art studio, Robert," I said. "It's where she meets Mark." He looked at me, pain etching deep lines around his mouth. "She's pregnant. That's what Mark says. He's using it to blackmail me in our divorce." Robert let out a short, bitter laugh. It was a terrifying sound. "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because..." Robert leaned in, his eyes hard as flint. "I had a vasectomy 5 years ago, before I met her. She knows that. If she's pregnant, it's not mine. But honestly, I don't think she's pregnant at all. I think she's playing a game. She's drinking tequila," I added. "I saw the video." Robert nodded slowly. He wasn't crying. He was past tears. He was in the zone of cold, calculated fury, the same zone I had been living in for weeks. He looked at the evidence again. "Mark, does he know she's married?" Robert asked. "I don't think so. He thinks she's a successful marketing executive who is madly in love with him. He thinks he's her savior." "Savior?" Robert scoffed. "She spends $20,000 a month on my credit cards. She drives a Porsche I paid for. If she leaves me for him, she leaves with nothing. We have a prenuptial agreement. An ironclad one. Infidelity voids her spousal support." He looked up at me. Why are you telling me this, Linda? You could have just used this in your divorce court. Because, I said, Mark is destroying my family. He's humiliated my sons, and Tiffany is helping him do it. I want justice, but I can't take down Tiffany alone. She's your wife. Not for long, Robert said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to me, then he looked me in the eye. Mark works for Logistics Prime, correct? Yes. They have their annual company picnic this Saturday at the lakeside grounds. I nodded. Mark begged me to go. He needs to play the happy family role to get a promotion. He thinks if he gets promoted, he can pay me off. Robert smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a predator's smile. Linda, he said, I think you should go to that picnic. I think you should wear your best dress. And I think you should tell Mark that you're willing to discuss a settlement. And what will you do? I'm a major shareholder in Logistics Prime, Robert revealed. I know the CEO personally. I think it's time I paid a visit to the company picnic. I have some business to discuss with my wife. We sat there for another hour plotting. Two betrayed spouses, sipping lukewarm coffee, designing the destruction of the people who hurt us. It wasn't just revenge. It was a tactical operation. When we shook hands outside the coffee shop, I felt a surge of power. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a tank, and we were rolling into battle. On Saturday, the next day, Mark called me. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. I needed to sound broken. I needed to sound defeated. Hello, I answered, keeping my voice small and wavering. Linda, Mark said. He sounded brisk, businesslike. I'm glad you picked up. Look, about the mediation, things got heated. Maybe we can find a middle ground. I don't know, Mark. I sighed. The pregnancy. It's a lot to process. If you're really having a baby? I am. He lied smoothly. And that's why I need this promotion, Linda. The VP senior role opens up next month. If I get it, my salary doubles. That means more alimony for you, more money for the boys. Everyone wins. What do you want me to do? The company picnic is this Saturday, he said. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, is big on family values. He expects to see us there, together, happy. If you come, if you play the part of the supportive wife just one last time, I'll sign over the house. I'll agree to your terms on the custody. I just need this promotion to afford the new baby. He was dangling the house like a carrot. He thought I was desperate enough to bite. You promise? You'll give me the house in writing. I'll have my lawyer draft it Monday morning, he promised. Just come to the picnic. Wear that blue dress I like. Smile. Hold my hand. Can you do that? Okay. I whispered. I'll do it. For the boys. Good girl, he said. The condescension dripped from the phone. I knew you'd see reason. I'll pick you up at 11 o'clock. No, I said quickly. I'll drive myself. I have some errands to run beforehand. I'll meet you there. Fine. Just don't be late. And Linda, look presentable. No sweatpants. I hung up and stared at the phone. Good girl. He had called me like a dog, like a trained pet. Saturday morning arrived with a blazing sun. I didn't wear the blue dress Mark liked. That dress was for the submissive wife, the woman who faded into the background. Instead, I went to my closet and pulled out a dress I had bought 3 years ago, but never wore because Mark said it was too aggressive. It was a tailored crimson-red sheath dress. Fit like armor. I paired it with my highest heels. I spent an hour on my hair, blow-drying it into sleek, sharp waves. I applied red lipstick, a shade called Victory. When I walked downstairs, Jason whistled. Whoa, Mom, he said, looking up from his video game. You look dangerous. That's the point, I said, adjusting my earrings. Boys, you're staying at Grandma's today. Not Martha, my mother, who lived an hour away. I don't want you to see this. See what? Tyler asked. Justice, I said. I drove to the picnic grounds with the windows down, letting the wind mess up my hair just a little. I wanted to look like I was arriving from a life that was vibrant and full, not a woman who had been crying in a pillow. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. Message, ETA 12:30. The cavalry is coming. Stay strong. I parked the car. I could smell the charcoal of the barbecue grills and hear the murmur of corporate conversation. I took a deep breath. This was it. Mark wanted a show. I was going to give him a show, but it wasn't going to be a romantic comedy. It was going to be a tragedy. And he was the main character. I walked toward the entrance tent. I saw Mark standing near the coolers, holding a beer, laughing with his boss. He looked confident. He looked happy. He had no idea that in less than an hour, his entire world was going to burn to the ground. The Logistics Prime annual picnic was held at a sprawling lakeside park. It was the kind of event that screamed corporate forced fun. There were red and white checkered tablecloths, a bouncy castle for the kids that looked dangerously underinflated, and a DJ playing Celebration by Cool and the gang at a volume that made conversation impossible. I scanned the crowd. It was a sea of polo shirts and khakis. Mark was standing near the very important person tent, chatting with Mr. Henderson, the CEO. When Mark saw me, his eyes widened. He excused himself and rushed over, grabbing my elbow a little too tightly. "You're here?" he hissed, looking me up and down. "And you're wearing red? You said, look presentable." I smiled, pulling my arm away. "I thought red was festive." "It stands out," he grumbled. "You're supposed to blend in. Whatever, just smile. Mr. Henderson is watching." We walked over to the CEO. Mr. Henderson was a jovial man with a white mustache and a firm handshake. "Linda, good to see you," he boomed. "Mark was just telling me about the new expansion plans. This man is a machine. You must be very proud." "Oh, I'm amazed by him every day," I said, my voice dripping with a sweet poison that only I could taste. "Mark is certainly full of surprises." "That he is," Henderson laughed. "We're thinking of moving him up to senior VP. He needs stability at home for that, though. Big responsibility. Glad to see you two are solid. Heard some rumors about, well, rough patches." Mark stiffened. "Just rumors, sir. Linda and I are better than ever. Right, honey?" He put his arm around my waist, his fingers digging into my side. It took every ounce of my willpower not to stomp on his foot. "Marriage is a journey," I said diplomatically. As we mingled, I spotted her. Tiffany was there. The audacity of it took my breath away. She wasn't standing with Mark, obviously. She was near the intern group, wearing a white sundress and a floppy hat, holding a glass of sangria. She looked young, pretty, and completely out of place. She caught Mark's eye and gave a little wave. Mark turned slightly pale and looked away quickly. Why was she here? Had she insisted on coming to watch her man get promoted? Or had Mark invited her too, arrogant enough to think he could juggle his wife and his mistress in the same park? Then I saw Martha. My mother-in-law was sitting at a picnic table under a tree, holding court with some other elderly relatives. She saw me in my red dress and frowned, pursing her lips. I walked over. "Hello, Martha." "Linda," she sniffed. "That dress is a bit much for a barbecue. Isn't it? You look like a stop sign." "I wanted to make sure Mark could find me," I said. "Is Tiffany enjoying the party?" Martha dropped her fork. "Hush, keep your voice down. Why is she here?" "Mark invited her," I lied. "He wants his new family to see his success." "He's a fool," Martha muttered, looking anxious. "But at least you're here. You're doing the right thing, Linda. Standing by him. For the baby." "Oh yes," I said. "The baby." The humidity was rising. The smell of burnt hot dogs filled the air. I checked my watch. 12:25. Robert was 5 minutes out. I needed to move Mark into position. "Mark," I said, walking back to him. "Mr. Henderson looks like he's about to make the speeches. Shouldn't we be near the stage?" Yes, Mark said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Come on, stand next to me. Look adoring." We moved toward the wooden gazebo that served as the stage. A microphone was set up. The music died down. Mr. Henderson stepped up to the mic, tapping it. "Testing 1, 2. All right, everyone, gather round." The crowd shuffled in. Tiffany moved closer, standing near the edge of the crowd, beaming at Mark. Mark stood tall, puffing out his chest, ready for his coronation. "We've had a great year at Logistics Prime," Henderson began. "Record profits, record growth, and that's thanks to our leadership team." I looked toward the parking lot entrance. A black Escalade pulled up, then another, then a police cruiser. Mark didn't see them. He was too busy staring at the CEO. The doors of the Escalade opened. Robert Vance stepped out. He was wearing a charcoal suit, looking like a titan of industry. He was flanked by 2 men in suits, lawyers, and 2 uniformed police officers. They began to walk across the grass toward the gazebo. I felt a thrill of electricity shoot through me. The trap was sprung. "Mark," I whispered. "Someone is here to see you." "Not now, Linda," he hissed. "Now," I said, stepping back, separating myself from him. "I think you really need to look." Mark turned. He saw the police. He saw the lawyers. And then he saw Robert. He frowned. "Who is that?" But Tiffany saw him too. I watched the blood drain from her face. She dropped her glass of sangria. It shattered on the concrete path, red wine splashing onto her white dress like a gunshot wound. "Robert," she whispered, loud enough for the people around her to hear. Robert didn't stop. He walked straight through the parting crowd, his eyes locked on the stage. Mr. Henderson stopped speaking. "Robert Vance. What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming." Robert walked up the steps of the gazebo, took the microphone from a confused Mr. Henderson, and looked out at the crowd. "Forgive the interruption, Jim," Robert said, his voice booming over the speakers. But there is a crime in progress. Mark froze. He looked at me, then at Robert, then at Tiffany. The pieces were starting to click, but too slowly. I crossed my arms and smiled. It was time for the fireworks. The silence that fell over the park was absolute. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. 300 employees, their spouses, and children stared at the gazebo where Robert Vance stood like an avenging angel. Robert Vance was a legend in this industry. Logistics Prime was a mid-sized fish. Vance Logistics was the ocean. For him to show up unannounced was like Zeus descending from Olympus. Mr. Henderson looked bewildered. A crime, Robert? What are you talking about? Robert turned his gaze to Mark. Mark shrank back, his bravado evaporating like mist. I am here, Robert said, his voice combed but projected with lethal precision. To discuss an employee of yours, Mark Reynolds. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. All eyes snapped to Mark. He looked like a deer in headlights, sweating profusely in his cheap suit. Me? Mark squeaked. I don't know you. No, Robert said. But you know my wife. Robert pointed a finger into the crowd. Tiffany Vance, stand up please. Tiffany was trying to hide behind a large potted plant near the DJ booth. She looked like she wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. Tiffany, Mark whispered, looking at her. Tiffany Miller is my wife, Robert announced. We have been married for 3 years, and for the last 6 months, she has been financing a secret life with Mr. Reynolds, using my credit cards and my company assets. The murmurs turned into a roar. People were whispering, pointing. I saw Martha clutching her chest, her face turning a sickly shade of gray. But that's not all, Robert continued. In the process of investigating my wife's infidelity, I uncovered something that concerns your company, Jim. Robert motioned to one of the lawyers who stepped up and handed a thick file to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Reynolds hasn't just been stealing from his own family, Robert said, looking directly at me for a split second, a nod of acknowledgement. He has been approving fraudulent invoices. He has been funneling Logistics Prime money into a shell company called TM Consulting, Tiffany Miller Consulting, to pay for their vacations, to pay for her apartment. Mr. Henderson opened the file. His face went from confused to furious in 3 seconds. He looked at the invoices. He looked at Mark. Mark, Henderson roared. Is this true? Did you sign off on these vendor payments? It was a misunderstanding, Mark stammered, holding his hands up. I can explain. It was an investment. A marketing consultation. Marketing. Robert scoffed into the mic. My wife is an unemployed art history major. She doesn't know the first thing about logistics marketing. Then Robert delivered the coup de grace. The moment we had planned for. The pregnancy lie. And finally, Robert said, looking at Mark with pure pity, I hear there is a rumor of a baby, a miracle child that Mr. Reynolds is expecting with my wife. Mark straightened up slightly. Yes, she's pregnant. That's why we need understanding. Robert shook his head slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it up. This is a medical record, Robert said. From my urologist, dated 5 years ago. I had a vasectomy, a successful one. And Tiffany, well, she has an IUD. We discussed it with her doctor last year. He paused for effect. There is no baby, Mark. She played you, just like you played your wife. The crowd erupted. Laughter, shock, cheers. Mark turned to Tiffany. You lied. But the booties. The nursery. Tiffany was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. I needed the money, Mark. You said you were rich. You said you'd leave your old wife and we'd be rich. I'm broke. Mark screamed at her. I stole from my kids for you. And the old wife who caught you, I said, stepping forward, my voice cutting through the chaos, even without a microphone. I walked up to Mark. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. He looked small. He looked pathetic. Linda, he whispered, help me, please. I stood there in my red dress, the sun hitting my face, feeling the heat of 300 pairs of eyes on me. This was the moment I had dreamed of every time I looked at my son's empty bank accounts. I didn't whisper, I projected. Help you? I asked, my voice ringing out clear and strong. You want me to help you? Like I helped you build this career? Like I helped you hide your incompetence for 15 years? Like I helped you raise the sons you stole from? I reached into my purse and pulled out my own file. The forensic accounting of our family finances. I slapped it against his chest. He fumbled to catch it. I am done helping you, Mark. I am here to witness the consequences of your actions. I turned to Mr. Henderson. Jim, inside that file are the transfer records from our personal accounts showing how he moved the stolen money. It matches the dates of your phantom vendor invoices. He was double dipping. Stealing from you to pay her, and stealing from us to pay her. Mr. Henderson turned purple. You're fired, Mark. Effective immediately. And you. He pointed at the police officers. Get him out of here before I press charges right now. Wait. Mark screamed as the officers moved in. I can fix this, Linda. Tell them we can work this out. The police grabbed his arms. He struggled, his suit jacket tearing at the shoulder. Tiffany. Mark yelled. Do something. Tiffany was busy trying to run away, but Robert's security team blocked her. Path. Robert stood over her, looking cold and distant. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, Tiffany, Robert said. The prenup is triggered. You get nothing. And the Porsche? It's being towed as we speak. Robert, baby, please, she wailed, grabbing his sleeve. He brushed her off like dust. The scene was chaotic. The music had stopped. People were filming with their phones. Mark was being dragged toward the parking lot in handcuffs for the disturbance and potential fraud. Tiffany was weeping on the grass. Martha had fainted into a plate of potato salad. It was glorious. It was a symphony of destruction. And in the middle of it all, I felt a profound sense of peace. I picked up a glass of champagne from a passing waiter's tray. I raised it to Robert, who nodded solemnly from the stage. At this exact moment, as Mark was being shoved into the back of a squad car, and Tiffany was realizing her gold-digging days were over, the entire park fell silent, watching the fall of the arrogant king. If you are listening to this and feeling that sweet sense of justice, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button and comment the number 1 down below. Let me know that you are standing with me, that you believe liars should get what they deserve. Your support is the fuel that keeps me going. Comment 1 if you're on Team Linda. Now, let me tell you what happened when the dust finally settled. The picnic ended abruptly after that. It's hard to eat hamburgers after watching your VP get arrested and his mistress get disowned by her tycoon husband. I watched from the parking lot as the police car drove away with Mark in the backseat. He was pressing his face against the glass, looking back at me. I didn't wave. I just adjusted my sunglasses. Robert walked over to me. He looked tired, but relieved. Are you okay, Linda? He asked. I'm better than okay, Robert, I said. I feel light. My lawyers will be in touch with Mr. Henderson, Robert said. We're going to make sure the company doesn't press criminal charges if Mark agrees to immediate restitution. I don't want a long trial. I just want him ruined. He doesn't have the money for restitution, I pointed out. No, Robert smiled grimly. But he has a 401k, and he has stock options. We'll garnish everything. He'll be lucky if he can afford a bus ticket out of town. I looked over at Tiffany. She was sitting on the curb, barefoot. She had broken a heel trying to call someone, probably her parents. Robert had already canceled her phone plan. I could see her staring at the screen in frustration as the calls failed. What about her? I asked. I'm filing for an annulment based on fraud, Robert said. She lied about her identity, her background, everything. She's going back to Kansas or wherever she crawled out of. She's not my problem anymore. I got into my car, Mark's leased Mercedes, which I had reclaimed. I drove home in silence, but my mind was loud with victory. When I got home, the house was quiet. The boys were still at my mom's. I walked into the kitchen. The same kitchen where Mark had slammed the divorce papers down just 2 weeks ago. Felt different now. Felt like my house. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat at the table. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Martha. Message. How could you? You humiliated him. You ruined the family name. I am in the hospital with palpitations. I typed back slowly. Reply. Mark ruined the family name when he became a thief. Get well soon, Martha. And don't ask me for money for the bill. Then I blocked her number. An hour later, my lawyer called. Linda, Sarah said, sounding cheerful. I just got a call from Mark's lawyer. He's fired Mark as a client. Apparently, Mark's check bounced. I laughed. So, who is representing him? A public defender, probably. Or he'll have to represent himself. Either way, he's desperate. He wants to settle. He's willing to give you everything. So, custody, the house, the remaining assets, if you just convince the company not to send him to jail. Let him sweat for a night, I said. I'll think about it tomorrow. That night I slept like a baby. No snoring, no lies, no anxiety. Just the peaceful silence of a woman who had taken out the trash. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and logistics, but the good kind. I went to the school to pick up Jason and Tyler. I was nervous about telling them what happened, but news travels fast. Jason got into the car, a strange look on his face. Mom, is it true? Did Dad get arrested at the picnic? Who told you that? It's on TikTok, Jason said. Someone filmed it. It has like 1 million views. CEO husband crashes picnic to expose cheating wife and VP. My stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about the viral aspect. Is Dad going to jail? Tyler asked, his voice trembling. I pulled the car over. I turned around to face them. Dad is in trouble, I said honestly. He broke the law. He took money that wasn't his. But Mr. Vance, the man from the video, is working it out. So, Dad probably won't go to prison for a long time. He will, however, have to pay back every penny. So, he's poor now? Tyler asked. Yes, honey, he is. Good, Tyler said, crossing his arms. Maybe he can learn how to save money like you taught us. I smiled. My boys were resilient. They were hurt, yes, but they saw the truth. They saw their father for who he was, and they saw me standing strong. Mark was released on bail the next morning, paid for by selling his Rolex watch. He tried to come to the house. I saw him on the security camera. He looked disheveled. He was wearing a tracksuit. He rang the doorbell incessantly. I didn't open the door. I spoke. Through the intercom. Go away, Mark. Linda, please, he sobbed. I have nowhere to go. Tiffany locked me out of the studio. Robert evicted her, so she kicked me out. I'm sleeping in my car. Wait, I don't have a car. I'm sleeping on a park bench. That sounds uncomfortable, I said. Maybe you should ask your mother for a room. Mom won't talk to me. She says I embarrassed her at the club. Well, I said, actions have consequences. We have a restraining order, Mark. If you don't leave the property in 2 minutes, I'm calling the police again. And this time it won't be for fraud. It will be for harassment. He stared at the camera, his face a mask of misery. I miss the boys. I miss my life. You should have thought about that before you bet it all on a pair of pink feather earrings, I said. I turned off the intercom. I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped. A broken man, dragging his feet down the driveway he used to own. It was a tragedy, yes, but it was a tragedy he wrote, directed, and starred in. I was just the critic who gave it a bad review. Mark didn't give up immediately. Narcissists never do. A week later, he tried to ambush Jason at soccer practice. He showed up at the field looking like a homeless man trying to give Jason a bag of candy. It was bizarre. The coach, who knew the situation, intercepted him. You need to leave, Mr. Reynolds, the coach said. I just want to see my son, Mark shouted. Jason walked over to the fence. He didn't open the gate. He looked at his father through the chain links. Dad, stop, Jason said calmly. You're embarrassing yourself. And you're embarrassing me, Jason. I built this family. Mom built this family, Jason corrected him. You just paid for the pizza sometimes. Go away, Dad. Get help. Get a job. Then maybe we can talk. Jason turned his back and walked back to the field. Mark stood there, gripping the fence, crying. It was the final rejection, the one that mattered most. He had lost his wife, his job, his money, and now the respect of his firstborn. That was the breaking point. Mark stopped fighting. He called Sarah the next day. He agreed to sign everything. He agreed to the full repayment plan. He agreed to supervised visitation only, which the boys declined for now. He agreed to let me keep the house, the retirement accounts, and full custody. He just wanted it to be over. Signing the final papers was anticlimactic. We didn't do it in a courtroom. We did it in a notary's office. Mark looked 10 years older. He signed page after page without reading them. I'm sorry, Linda, he said quietly when it was done. I really am. I looked at him. I searched my heart for anger, but I found only indifference. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't refill the college funds. Only checks do. I'm working at a warehouse, he muttered. Amazon. The night shift. It pays. Okay. I'll send the checks. You do that, I said. I walked out of that office a free woman. The sun was shining. The air smelled sweeter. I got into my car and checked my phone. A text from Robert Vance. Message. Hearing went well. I just wanted to let you know that Tiffany has officially moved back to Nebraska. And I was wondering if you'd like to grab dinner to celebrate freedom. As friends? I smiled. As friends. I typed back. For now. 6 months have passed since the picnic. Life looks very different now. The house is peaceful. We repainted the kitchen. No more reminders of Mark. Jason got a partial scholarship for his grades, and I managed to replenish a good chunk of the college fund by selling Mark's extensive collection of vintage watches and golf clubs, which it turned out he'd acquired illegally. I went back to work, not as a stressed-out auditor, but as a financial consultant for women going through divorce. I helped them find the hidden assets. I helped them read the tax returns. I helped them find their war paint. It is the most fulfilling work I have ever done. Tyler is doing great. He doesn't ask about Dad much anymore. But when Mark calls for his supervised video chats, Tyler talks to him. It's awkward, but it's healing. Mark is humble now. He's living in a small apartment with 2 roommates, driving a used Honda. He looks human. As for me, I'm happy. Truly happy. I learned that I wasn't just a housewife. I wasn't just a supporting character in Mark's movie. I was the director of my own life. I'm dating again. Robert and I have dinner every Friday. We take it slow. We bond over our shared trauma, but we also laugh. We laugh a lot. He respects me. He asks for my advice on business. He treats me like an equal. Last week, I was cleaning out the junk drawer, the same one where I found the pen to sign the divorce papers. I found that cheap pink feather earring. I looked at it and smiled. I didn't throw it away. I put it in a small box on my desk. A reminder. A reminder that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. If Mark hadn't cheated, if he hadn't been so arrogant, I would still be asleep. I would still be the woman wiping the counter, waiting for permission to live. Now I don't wait for permission. I write my own checks. I sign my own papers. And I never, ever underestimate myself. Thank you for listening. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were being completely underestimated? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.